atmospheric air to be ventilated through the service side upon brake application or brake release. So basically, it's to keep contaminants out.
Welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvine, and in this episode, we are going to be taking a deep dive on air disc brakes. We're going to talk about electronic brake monitoring systems and really what it's going to take to extend the life of your brakes. Now, to have that conversation, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Randy King. Randy King is the National Sales Manager for Transit and Brake Monitoring Markets at MGM Brakes. And Randy brings with him 47 years of experience in the heavy-duty parts industry, the last 12 of those at MGM Brakes. He oversees the transit business unit, and also he is responsible for driving sales of MGM's air brake actuators and the e-stroke electronic brake monitoring system within the transit market. So Randy is the man. Randy, welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
So when someone says 47 years of experience, like that is an incredible career. You have seen a lot of change in the heavy duty parts industry in that time.
That's for sure. Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
I think even in my 27 years, how much has changed. And it just seems like that change is accelerating all the time. So today we're going to talk about a wide range of really topics related to brakes. But maybe what I wanted to do is kind of begin the conversation by having you explain to us some of the different models that MGM Brakes brings to the market. So we've got some acronyms that for you probably, you've got them all memorized. You know exactly what they are with all of your experience. But for some of our audience, they might not know. So tell me the key differences between CSB, TRB, and MJB when it comes to your air disc brake actuators.
Well, the CSB is our service chamber that's got a continuous ring clamping band, non-removable clamping band. Service chamber typically used on steer axles, can be used on tag axles on the 3-axle coaches. But so that's the service chamber. The TRB is our double diaphragm brake chamber with the breathing tube. The MJB is our piston style brake chamber, also with a breathing tube. That's just the differences in them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so these all have kind of different vocational applications. So could you walk us through those?
Well, the service chamber is typically would be for any type of application, depending, different sizes, of course, 20, 24, 30s. But it typically, like I said, would be used on steer axles and a lot of times on tag axles, so 3-axle commuter coaches. The double diaphragm parking brake chamber would typically be used in an over-the-road truck application. Early on, when SCAM was still prevalent on transit buses, you would have double diaphragm units used. Since they've gone to disc brakes, mainly all the transit bus OEs anyway have gone to the piston style chamber, piston diaphragm style chamber, which, like I said, is the MJB model. They've gone to that. The MJB also has it uses a piston on the parking brake side instead of a diaphragm, so it allows for a larger parking brake spring, which translates into greater parking brake force, up to about 500 pounds more parking brake force. So that's used on a lot of more severe applications, fire trucks, transit buses, that types of applications.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about the role and the benefits of the dual thread release bolt design in that MJB model.
Yeah. So the release bolt, instead of being a removable caging tool, which is referred to also, that on the double diaphragm models is, it's a removable device kept in that little pocket on the side of the chamber in the center section. The release bolt you're talking about in the MJB model is integral to the unit, so it's built into the unit. It has minimal protrusion, so if you have tight areas to work with, it's very minimal protrusion for maximum caging ability.
Yeah, and actually, if you're used to working on like over the road trucks and trailers, especially trailers, it's a very different environment when you're working on like a transit bus, right? Like the space and the way that those buses are designed, they're very compact. Has a big impact on brakes, both with friction material and also working space for these actuators.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, that seems like there's not a lot of room to work with, so there's spaces at a premium. So something like that really comes in handy.
Earlier when we were talking about the TRB style spring brake, you were talking about that external breather tube technology. I know when I was selling your product, we would talk to people that were in a more vocational application, so not transit, but let's say logging or oil and gas, and they're out in the bush. There was a lot of dirt and debris that they have to travel through every day. How does that external breather tube technology help for those types of applications?
Well, instead of having in the head of the spring brake on the parking brake side, instead of having a open vent hole, we have the tube in there that will keep debris out. And what that does, the tube connects to the service side of the brake chamber, so it allows for atmospheric air to be ventilated through the service side upon brake application or brake release. So basically, it's to keep contaminants out and still allow the unit to breathe and function. Right, it'll save a lot of corrosion, a lot of problems down in the parking brake side because you don't have all the debris contaminants getting in there, but still able to have it vent and breathe, so keeps condensation down and things of that nature.
Yeah, and like things like condensation, what does that do to the internal components?
Well, I mean, condensation is water, right? When you get down to it, so it's going to help accelerate any corrosions and rust or whatever can happen when you have that type of wet atmosphere. So it's going to help keep things drier, and obviously would help keep down on that acceleration of corrosion.
Yeah, so way back in the day, like when I started my career, I started in remanufacturing, and we actually were remanufacturing spring brakes back then, believe it or not.
Mhm. I
And
remember those days.
yeah, yeah. And I remember, putting the spring brake in the machine, had our safety glass down. We had it all
Mhm.
compressed. We'd take that sealed clamp off and then we'd slowly release it. But sometimes when you released it, nothing happened because the spring was broken or
Mhm.
there was so much dirt and stuff packed into that spring brake that, you could see why the thing failed. That this is really in response to those kinds of issues that MGM designed this external breathing tube, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right. That's the exact reason why that was come up with. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a mixture now of types of brakes on the market. Like when I started my career, it was basically all spring brake and S cam, very limited air disc brake. That's really changing. So this is why you've developed different models. Now I know that you work primarily in transit, but the air disc brake movement is starting to pick up speed and starting to kind of spill out over not just the like you mentioned transit and fire truck markets. How is MGM Brakes seeing that as that is changing in the marketplace?
Yeah, I asked, like I said, I spent all my time in the transit market, so I kind of reached out to the other guys, seeing what they're seeing in their markets that they serve as far as percentage of disc brakes. And, it varies on who they're calling on. There is still resistance just because of the change. People are used to SCAM. They're comfortable with that. They don't like the idea of going to something different they're not as familiar with. So there is some of that resistance, but we're seeing that market grow. Some of the guys sent me some information here. Let me see if I can find it. Percentage of disc brakes. There was a CVSA report out. Think fairly released recently. Out of a little over 15,000 power units out there, there's about 31%, 31.5% air disc now. As far as
Oh,
towed units, about 9,000 air disc, about 14.5%. So it is growing. It's more prevalent in other markets. And like I said, depending on the fleet too. If the fleet's not comfortable, they don't want to move. I know Lynn Gonzalez, you've interviewed before with MGM. He spends a lot, he's the head of our vocational unit. And Ready Mix seems to be one that doesn't want disc brakes. It's just they're getting about the same mileage, I guess, disc or SCAM. And with all the concrete and stuff getting caked, if they have to go real deep, which most of the time they do, if they're starting to replace calipers, rotors, and pads, it's pretty expensive as compared to what the parts cost on SCAM brakes are. But in the transit market, if a lot of times they might resurface the rotor, but that's about it. Put a new set of pads in. That's very minimal labor time. not a lot of cost to it. So it's works real well in the transit market, and more the traditional tractor trailer market is moving towards disc.
Yeah.
More on the power units than the trailers. There's some trailers that set a lot and don't get a lot of use, so they kind of stick with S-cam on those, I guess. But tankers would be one that would maybe move towards disc because those trailers are getting used all the time. So disc runs a little bit cooler than S-cam does too. So especially on a tanker application, the old dreaded thermal event seems to be lessened with disc brakes. They run a little cooler. Not that it can't happen, but I don't think it's as easy. So applications like that may gravitate more towards disc than some of the other markets do.
So give us a little history lesson. Why was transit an early adopter of air disc brake technology?
Europe is pretty much all disc brakes. And a lot of the coaches are either based out of Europe or built, some of them are built in Europe or in Canada. The biggest transit bus manufacturer in North America is based in Canada. All they do have plants here in the States to meet the Buy America criteria. But so I don't know if that's part of the reason, because Europe has been all disc for a long time now. And the transit market seemed to move towards that, maybe 15 to 20 years ago. In fact, there was two of the major manufacturers of transit buses that didn't even offer S-cam at all anymore. And there was one that still was offering either or. First off, you had to spec disc if you wanted, otherwise it would be drum. But I think it's kind of flipped the other way around now. They're building more and more disc brake units that I think it's the other way around now. If you want S-cam, you're going to have to spec that, or otherwise it will come with disc. But the exact reason, I don't know. I know the stopping distance is greatly reduced with disc brakes as compared to S-cam. I mean, NTSB reports from stopping distances are reduced anywhere from 16 to 30% over S-cam.
So when you're carrying a bunch of people, that really matters, right?
Oh yeah. That's nobody wants an accident with any kind of commercial vehicle or any kind of vehicle at all, for that matter. But when you're carrying people, that the liability is heightened. Like I said, at about 30% better stopping distance if it's a straight S-cam, about 16 or so percent better stopping distance, even if what they call enhanced S-cam brakes, which would be upgraded steer axle brakes, maybe bigger steer axle brakes, more aggressive friction material. There's still like a 16 to 18% advantage with stopping distance of disc over S-cam. So that's a big factor. I mean, we're talking safety, so that's a big deal.
It's time to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Lowering total cost of operation involves looking at critical components that you put on your commercial vehicles and making sure that you are making the best selection for your application. With all of that in mind, I want to introduce you to the new standard in wheel end protection, the Hubcorp's revolutionary X-Tractor. Now, what I like about this product, it's the only line of hubcaps that comes with a built-in 3-stage magnetic oil filter. And this is a safeguard for your critical wheel end components. In addition to that, it is actually a serviceable component on your vehicle now. And so it has a patent pending hex thread cartridge. And the X-Tractor makes hub oil servicing really simple and easy. And guess what? If you're not servicing that hub oil regularly, you are going to have premature failure of key components. It's just the way it works. So I highly encourage you to get on the wait list today. You can do that by heading over to thehubcorp.com. Check it out, get on the wait list, and you will get the most up-to-date information about when this product is available and also some price discounts that you won't get anywhere else. So go visit thehubcorp.com today. It's not just fleets and owner-operators that need to look at their total cost of operation and find tools that help them with their business. If you're running a repair shop, then you need tools to streamline your operations, and that's why I recommend FullBay. Now, FullBay has features like streamlined scheduling, real-time inventory tracking, technician efficiency insights, and detailed reports on exactly every aspect of the business that you need to be paying attention to make sure that your repair shop is running as efficiently as possible. And what does this mean for you? Well, it means in the end that FullBay is the very tool that's going to help you reduce downtime and make your shop more efficient. keeping the vehicles that you service on the road where they belong. Check out fullbay.com/power to maximize your shop's productivity today. That's fullbay.com/power. Manufacturers and distributors are a key component in the supply chain, and they play a vital role in keeping trucks and trailers rolling. I'd like to introduce you to Equip 360 by Gen Alpha. This platform helps manufacturers and distributors grow their part sales. But more importantly, it helps them make their customers' lives easier. And that's so important. With real-time insights into inventory, pricing, and order tracking, it's going to keep your customers coming back. Plus, it saves time by automating routine tasks and making repeat purchases simple. I encourage you to explore Equip 360 at genalpha.com, genalpha.com. Check it out today. We're back from our break. Make sure you go and check out the links in our show notes to all of our sponsors. Okay, let's get back to this episode. Randy, let's continue our conversation. I want to shift gears now and talk about the e-stroke system. So what specific brake issues can the e-stroke system detect in real time? And how does that affect the performance of the fleet that's using this monitoring system?
Yeah, the e-stroke system, this is going to give you a little brief background on it. It's a continuous real-time brake stroke monitoring program. And what we use the measurement of the piston rod travel along with brake application pressure to monitor the condition of the air brake system. And so what we're looking for is we're looking for non-functioning brake chambers. We're looking for any brakes that may be out of adjustment or overstroke. We're looking for dragging brake. We can pick up with disc brakes. We can pick up low pad to rotor clearance issues. It is a self-diagnosing system too, so it can diagnose if there's any sensor errors or sensor faults, and it can help you differentiate between if the problem is in the air control portion of the air brake system or whether it's isolated to this one mechanical issue on the wheel end. So we use, like I said, the measurement of the piston rod travel, brake application pressure, vehicle speed is part of that too. It's inputs and outputs. So the input of the application pressure and the input of the vehicle speed and versus the output of the chamber stroke. The system knows if any of those conditions are existing, like I said, dragging brake, non-functioning brakes, overstroke, low pad to rotor clearance.
Okay, so with the system, is it something that comes OE? Is it retrofitted? And if that's the case, do you have to add sensors? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's available as an OEM option from all the transit coach manufacturers. So it does have to be spec'd. It can be retrofitted. Obviously, it's easier to have the OE install it just for the simple reason of, running harnesses and stuff like that after the vehicle is already put together is more difficult than if it was done at the OEM level. So yeah, it is a spec option.
Randy, my wife always says it's easier to build new than it is to renovate.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. So these sensors then they're tied into the ECU, and so this information is that then ported through some sort of telematics. Like, how does the fleet that's operating the transit buses get the data?
Yeah, we have a diagnostic program that can be loaded on the shop laptops, and also it can be integrated in with all the AVM systems, telematics. As long as the telematics are broadcast over the J1939 network, we're compatible with that because our information is also that goes to the ECU is also broadcast over the J1939 network. And the sensors are a little bit different between the SCAM system and the DISC system. The SCAM system used a Hall effect sensor that plugged into the rock shield of the brake chamber at the top. Again, then there's a magnet that's installed over the piston rod inside the service side. So it's measuring or monitoring the brake stroke and then turns that into a voltage signal, basically. With the DISC system, everything, all the capabilities and functions are the same, but the sensor is an optical infrared sensor on that, and there's a reflective target on the piston rod. So it's looking at the reflective target is either you got low reflectivity areas or high reflectivity areas on the target on the piston rod. So it's looking for those areas and also turning that into a voltage signal. So basically low voltage would be low reflectivity, high voltage would be high reflectivity. When I say high and low voltage, it's a 5-volt system. So low voltage would be anywhere from 0 to just under 2. and then 2 to 3.99 volts we would consider high voltage. So the optical sensor is just looking for the movement of the piston rod in conjunction with what kind of air pressure, if any, what I'm seeing. Am I seeing any vehicle speed? Is the vehicle actually in motion or is it parked? We've dialed that in over the years. We tried to give the information that's necessary and helpful without too much information. Sometimes too much information can be bad too. So we've tried to put timers and counters on some of the criteria for these faults to trigger to dial that in to where it is a real situation instead of something that may not be real.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so important, right? So tell me a little bit about the actionable data that these transit fleets are now collecting. How are they using it, and how is that impacting things like downtime and safety and the things that a fleet really is concerned about when they look at maintenance?
Like I said, they can retrieve the data or the diagnostic program of the e-stroke system, or they can get the same information over their AVM system. And basically, a lot of the fleets are using it during their PMs. They'll plug in or check, and if there's no faults, then everything's good. If there is a fault, then they know, and it is a wheel-in specific fault reporting. So it'll tell you exactly which wheel any condition is occurring on if a condition is occurring. So it dials it in to where, go to the left front, left, right, whatever. So it does that cuts down on troubleshooting time. It cuts down on component loss because a lot of times, let's face it, we don't know anything's wrong with these vehicles or anything's wrong with the brakes until a component has already been ruined or until something has already happened. Hopefully not safety related, but destroying components prematurely and things like that. So it's real time, immediate fault reporting. So you don't have to wait till something breaks before you think, oh, well, something's wrong here because something broke. So it really cuts down on the troubleshooting time, almost down to nothing. Like I said, fleets use it for their PMs. And we've had feedback over the years that they've saved buses from a thermal event because they've caught a dragging brake or something in time to where it didn't. Worst case scenarios, a thing burst into flames at the wheel end. That's very worst case. But at the very least, you could come back and things got overheated, not to the point where you had flames coming out of the wheel, but now you've got caliper that's shot, rotors that are shot, pads that are burned up, looming for ABS lines and stuff that's been melted. So it saves that from happening because it'll tell you right away if something's going on still, instead of figuring out later on, oh, something's wrong because I see broken components here.
Yeah, and I mean, the old days, everything was reactive, and you were relying pretty heavily on the report of maybe the driver. And I remember one time where the driver was adamant that it was like the left side brake that was the problem, but what he didn't realize is that if your right side is what's locked up, yes, it'll go left, but it's actually the left side that's locked up, forcing the vehicle right. So it was the opposite of what he thought.
Right.
And so then, of course, someone with experience on the technical side was able to go in there and diagnose that. But if you have all that data at your fingertips, you're not relying just on someone's perception of the problem. You're actually getting real data that's actionable that you can then take down. So yeah, I see that labor savings. I see also when you start talking about damaged components, it's one thing to have to, maybe prematurely change a set of pads. It's another if the rotor is shot, if the caliper is damaged, or like the other things around it start getting damaged. Like all of a sudden now your cost and your downtime is just skyrocketing through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, if things get so hot in that wheel, it could actually get as bad as the bursting inner tire or something. I mean, it can, it can be turned into a not good situation for sure.
Yeah, it can go bad real quick. Yeah. So, you're out in the field, you're working with these transit fleets, and you're seeing this in real time. You're seeing the benefits of this technology. So when you are talking to our audience, what's like the thing that you want people to remember about the product, maybe, or just about, preventative maintenance or like that? What's that one thing you want people to remember?
Probably the main thing is MGM cares about quality. Obviously, as we are the only manufacturer of spring brake actuators that is manufactured totally in the U.S. We're not the least expensive product on the market and never have been, never will be, because we do manufacture a very critical safety component, and the company's just not willing to skimp as far as raw materials, components that we use to build our product. So I think the main thing is the company cares about the product we're putting out on the market. We're very conscious about it. We're very proud of it. The people, it's not just a job for anybody at the company. It's a career for most everybody that's ever come to work for MGM. It's not just let's get through today or let's get to payday. I mean, people really take pride in what they do on every level of the company, from manufacturing to engineering to sales support, inside sales support. So we want to help solve problems. Yeah, we want to sell product with our financial obligations we have, everybody has in their life, helps feed our families, but we want to help. So we're trying to provide solutions, not just a product.
Well, I want to second that, because as someone who has sold MGM brakes in the field, I challenge anybody to put your brakes up against a lower purchase price in a spring brake or something, because when you actually do the math on how MGM brakes, how long they last, the downtime, the cost of replacing a lower purchase price product, you will find that this high quality product is going to be a lower total cost for you over a period of a few years. It's unfortunate that more people don't take the time to do that, but we will continue to fight the fine fight, won't we, Randy?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, you've been listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvine. We've been speaking with Randy King, National Sales Manager, responsible for transit and brake monitoring markets at MGM Brakes. To learn more about MGM Brakes, visit their website, mgmbrakes.com. Links are in the show notes. Randy, thank you so much for being on the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Jamie. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for watching this video. Click here to subscribe to the Heavy Duty Parts Report YouTube channel, and click here to watch another great episode.